Hi, it's Barry Cooper, and I'm here with another episode of Leading Your International School. This is going to be a bit of a special episode because I've lost my voice, but we have a conversation with Amanda Slavin. Did I say that right? Because I always get this wrong.
Yeah, I
Slavin,
like Slavin.
Slavin, Slavin,
It
Slavin.
sounds
Sorry,
posh.
it's Slavin. Yeah, it's the London accent. Who is I don't know how to describe you. It's like a kind of intersectionality between technology and education guru. But I think there's probably a
Oh,
cooler way of saying that. Um,
that was the coolest way of
yeah,
saying it.
but
I'm not describing myself like that. That's amazing. Great.
um, and so we just started just having a conversation, and I thought, you know what, I should probably press record, um, because we've already covered about five different topics, including twins, Montessori schools, technology, and why
AI and
being an
philosophy.
AI, but why being an English major is more important than anything else these days, which I agree with. I think literature and philosophy and history are absolutely vital.
Well, no, because you said you weren't a techie person, and then you said you were a historian and a philosopher, so then you're the most techie person there is.
So what does that
Because you
mean?
because technology is a manifestation of human thought and perspective and experience of the time, right? And so
Okay.
if you were to look at this is like right now, I've never thought of this until this conversation, but looking at like technology is writing, right? When people started to use words and
Yeah.
learn how to write, technology is learning how to create fire. Technology, I mean, it's literally it all comes from thought. And so what better thing to study than thought?
Yeah.
Perspective,
I'd,
experience,
I,
connection.
I
That's
suppose so.
maybe,
I mean,
maybe.
I think this is my big worry with AI, which is and technology in general, is that it's thought is cool, thought is amazing, thought is brilliant, thought is, but putting it into words or putting it into something that's transmittable is often really difficult. So it's why we get artists like Roscoe, and
Mm-hmm.
you have this expression of so much without
Yes.
the use of words. So I mean, but this technology did you find technology reduces the ability of students and us as people to express ourselves properly because it large language models kind of close things down, language can close things down. How do you find it?
You're asking, like, this is my favorite conversation ever. Like, I told you, I just like red eye. I'm like, yes, let's just get right in. Um, it's so I've really been thinking about this because I've been working with more and more kids hands-on in a lot of different age groups and being in classrooms and seeing kids again. I haven't been a teacher for since 2009. And it's been unbelievable. I mean, think about how much has changed in that time period.
Yeah,
And what I'm really seeing in the world with technology is that we just keep giving not just kids, every person a platform, and now every AI, but every person a platform to talk. So we're like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? But we're not giving them time to think and we're not teaching them how to think. So then we constantly have these reactions because we're teaching them how to talk, but we're not teaching them how to think. And so we need to be able to, I do really think this is a true thought or an expression of thought, who knows? But I do think that if we can use AI as a tool
mm,
to do the things that are slowing us down and are actually keeping us from being able to think, to use our brain, to use our human skills. My whole way of thinking is that we are treating kids like productivity machines and they will be outproduced and outpaced by AI. So if
yeah,
we start to teach them how to be humans and to think and to collaborate and to connect and to use these 21st century skills or durable skills or life skills or something, there's so many names. We need to figure out a better brand.
human
Then they could
skills
work
is
with
the one I've
AI.
liked. Yeah,
You,
but
but it's like, what? Shouldn't we kind of know these? Like, shouldn't this be something that is intrinsic to our nature?
It's, I mean, you would think that, but I think everything you've been talking about is it's the kind of stuff that we were doing 5,000 years ago when we first started pitching in and going, okay, organized farming. We need three guys to do that, so two guys can go and work out how to build a forge or build a
That's why you're the best tech person I know.
create
That's what I just
irrigation.
said.
Yeah,
You know that.
well,
You
Jared,
know that.
no, well, Jared Diamond is the guy I read. So Guns, Germs, and Steel is a
Okay.
great. So he's an anthropologist, and he talks about that it's big shifts in history. So I'm a big fan of the
Mm.
Annales School of History, and it's these. And another friend was mentioning this the other day. He equated AI to steam power. So it's this sudden thrust of new kind of speed, but that yeah, exactly as you were saying, is it will outproduce our young people. So we need to think, well, actually, what are our young people really good at? And they're really good at thinking. You're engaged in I mean, you work a lot with gamification, don't you?
I do. And the word get like I think that every word we have
It's a
has been
pejorative.
misinterpreted
It does, yeah.
because we again I go back to how fast paced our world is, and so nothing is nuanced anymore, and so we like hear this word and we're like, this is what that word means, right? Even me, like where I'm like, oh, ed tech, so
Oh,
yes,
it's
and
big, yeah.
yeah, I never have a short answer. People are like, what's your name? I'm like, well, no, my name. So yes, and I'll answer that question.
But in terms of I mean, my experience of gamification is it does cover a really broad
Yeah.
kind of set of areas in terms of tech. So you have your esports and your things like that, but then also within kind of teaching, yeah, the simple idea. I mean, gamification in teaching has been around for a very long time. You play a game to
Mhm.
learn. It's great. It's but within that, is there scope for that combination of using AI, using gamification approaches to create classrooms that get people thinking more, or are we trapped in a kind of a kind of a capitalist cycle that's looking to
Hmm.
get the money out of gamification and AI
Oh my
rather than
gosh.
actually looking to develop really great kind of classroom experiences?
So much of yes to every aspect of your question, but I'll break out the question, I think.
Yeah,
So I think, well, let me talk briefly about my specific feelings about AI, and then let me talk about my
yeah,
feelings towards gamification, and then let me talk about my feelings about education and how they could potentially collaborate and work together. So with AI, I think that there's, Mark Andreessen wrote this whole utopian report around like, AI is gonna, he's a big tech
yeah,
mind. AI is going to save the entire world, and but AI is just a tool. It was, he's a very big thinker, and the way he expressed everything about AI was a bit of an oxymoron, where it was like AI is just a tool. It's not actually something that is bad, but it's going to save the entire world, and it can't be all of those things, right? So the way that I look at AI is that if we don't change the way that we are programming humans, AI will be scary because AI currently is programmed by humans. So we need to really focus on, and I don't think of it as the next generation. I think of it as a generation that's here now. When we were younger, we were then once we got older, we then had the voice to share and to express ourselves and to connect and to build and to create. These kids have that now. So I think of the generation now. So how are we preparing this generation for one of the most uncertain worlds that it's being built as we're actually using it? Again, the internet was not being created, like the internet just came. And then we had AOL, at least for me, I had an AOL CD, and then I was on, it was very slow. The internet's already here. And yet this next level of internet with spatial reality, the metaverse and AI and blockchain, all these new technologies. So I have a lot to say about AI, but I might just stop there and then I'll talk about gamification because you might want to react to the AI of it all. And then let's talk about how that plays a role with technology education and gamification.
so basically we're building the airplane while flying it. I mean, that's what you're saying.
And what's going to happen quite rapidly is the airplane's going to build itself because AI's just superpower is to learn and to grow and to then get smarter and to continue to build. But there's all this research that is showing that as AI, when AI is trained by AI, it actually does not become smarter. It becomes
Yeah,
less smart.
well,
And so we need to program AI to be better.
this is part of, I think, the yeah, when you come back to ideas about language and ideas about questioning and ideas about what we get from it. So, I work with I teach a history class here at the college, and it's I put the questions that the typical questions the kids would answer into the AI, and worked quite hard, created a chat bot to create something from it. But what it created was very it was very much what I would have written. It just did it very much faster. But it missed out a lot of key details, and so it was coming back to us with really simple approaches, simple structures, simple ways of looking at things, rather than what you would hope, which is something from a student who's 18 about to take your IB, something a bit more nuanced, something with a bit more development, something with a bit more assessment, something with a bit more critical thought. And I think you're absolutely right, because within the parameters of generative AI, which is just, and I appreciate this, lots of people who would say, that's just one kind of AI. Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
it's the thing that most kids are going to use most of the time.
Yes.
Um, is it's a large language model, and it's structured to work in a very predefined way, and it only gives you what is the most likely answer. And so it doesn't, but there's no space there to go, actually, what if? And you can do that if you're trained to use it in a way that's going to work in the way that you
Yes.
would work with other people. But if you're
That's it.
not, you're just taking,
But what you
it's
just said was
gospel.
the most,
Yeah.
that's exactly what you just said was the most key thing that I communicate constantly, which is so you start working with AI and it's an intern. And if you continue to actually work with it, I will work within a chat for 5 hours. And then actually yesterday I was testing this crazy thing out on the airplane where I was having Bard and ChatGPT, which don't talk to each other. I was prompting them both. So I was like telling Bard to create the prompts for ChatGPT, and then I was having ChatGPT create the prompts for Bard because you can't do documents. Anyway, it was quite interesting. But I had an agency for 10 years. So I worked with people and vendors and people all over the world and different types of clients with different types of needs. And so I was, I was really forced just because of the nature of work to learn how to work with a copywriter and an intern and have an intern actually become a good copywriter and have a good copywriter become a better copywriter and then have to work with a team of copywriters that had different opinions of my internal copywriter and be able to navigate all of those relationships and dynamics and know myself and know them. And what you just said is exactly right. That's the skills we need to work with other humans, and those are the skills we need to work with AI. And those
Yeah.
are the human skills. Okay, so now I'll go back to, so you just, that was a beautiful segue. So gamification. So my whole career, I have studied these 7 levels of engagement. So I wrote my thesis in 2008, 2009 on how the community as the classroom impacts engagement and achievement. And I found that there
Yeah.
were these 7 distinct levels of engagement. And then I ended up using that framework to open restaurants, which is a long story. But again, I had no other experience other than this funnel, which was a marketing funnel or an education funnel. It depends on the way you look at it. Then I started a consultancy and agency and utilized that framework and changing the way we measured success in learning, changed the way we measure success in employee engagement, changed the way we measure success in marketing using this framework. And now I've entered back into education. That's a very short history of why this is important to me. And so the way that I look at quote unquote gamifying anything is through this nuanced lens of engagement. So our traditional methods of success within a learning environment or even a gaming environment are binary. You're either disengaged or engaged.
Mm.
And it's often through time and attention or through outputs. Like you've earned these rewards, you've gotten into this school, you've gotten a good grade, you've even just you've done this test, you've answered the questions properly, which are actually lower levels of engagement.
Yeah.
So they're level 4 and 5. Okay, wait, we could go into levels if you're really interested. My interest is being able to use interesting, quote unquote, engaging experiences that teach kids about their own engagement, that teach kids about their own data and have them own that data so that they
Okay.
can make decisions about themselves, whether it's in a school environment, whether it's in a game environment, so that they can own their own learning journey. So I can explain what that actually means in terms of, but not yet, because I like your reaction. So then you just give me the things that I
Yeah.
need to build off of.
No, it's so what you it seemed to be you're describing is kind of a metacognition approach to how you
Yep.
develop the and
It's all
working
over the
within it.
website.
Yeah.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right. Metacognition. That's
But yeah, but
exactly right.
But I mean, knowing how you know is kind of one of those kind of key things. It's knowing how you learn is a key thing. So it's why I like the
Yes.
IB is because you have this TOK program where you're talking about, okay, how do you know that that's true? You boil it all the way back down. You're going back to epistemology and Descartes and all this sort of stuff. How do you know? What is truth? What is? How do you know that
Oh,
this is actually what you're getting to? But I think this comes back to why I think the skills within kind of philosophy, thought, literature as well, because literature itself is an expression of I always find literature to be this kind of reductio ad absurdum. It's like, is that key question is the what if for literature. And so you say,
hmm.
what if we created a planet, a single planet in the entire solar system where it was full of drugs that allowed you to travel through space, and you end up with Frank Herbert and Dune. I mean, it has lots of other things to it, but
Oh,
it's it's there, but with this, I think it comes back to that issue of how do we get students to actually say what if? How do we get students to say how do I know this? And so I love the idea of
Hmm.
giving them, I think, the agency within their learning in a more specific way. But how do you achieve that on a practical basis? That's the big
Yeah.
kind of challenge, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. And also, I never, there's so many thoughts that you're bringing up for me. I was talking to one gaming professional, and he said, within a gaming environment, you feel as the gamer that you should be progressing and you have control over that progression instead of what happens in life, which is not necessarily the case. And it blew my mind open because I was like, oh my, the it's such an environment that can make people feel like they're in control. And like, even if they do everything right, things can actually go their way. Versus in life, they don't have control over those scenarios and circumstances, even if they do everything right.
Oh my word. My brother and I grew up watching a lot of science fiction, and I remember an episode of Star Trek.
Oh
Sorry,
yeah, I just talked about Star Trek.
ca-
No, you're the second person, Captain Kirk with the phone. He was talking to me about Motorola phones and why Motorola is yeah, 100%
oh no,
Star Trek future.
it was the whole kind of Captain Jean-Luc Picard thing, and I forget who he's talking to, but it's perfect. What does he says? It's perfectly possible to do everything right and still lose. Which is life. But if that's something that happens, especially to younger people, where you're
Yes,
doing everything right,
yes.
how do you then
Yes,
get them to
yes.
get back up off the
Yeah,
mat?
now I'll answer. Now I'll actually
Yeah,
answer what I'm actually working on. So, learning styles have been debunked. So you're not visual, I'm not kinesthetic, you're not this is not
oh
the
no,
way that
no,
we learn.
yeah,
And I think for those and I was in English, so I have a master's in education and I was a double major of English and elementary education. So there was no business technology. That was not something that was really even readily available for me as I was going through school. Entrepreneurship was just in its early days. Facebook was at like four different schools when I went to college. Literally only four schools. It was just like kind of that college app that people knew that was in Harvard. And so I think, for stories have always been, I read the most books in my class in second grade. So stories have always been the way that I've connected through learning was fiction. I've never thought of it until you said it that way. So, and the higher levels of engagement, I'm actually going to briefly just talk about the levels because I think it will provide context
yeah,
and then you'll react even more. So the bottom three levels are what stand in the way of connection or of learning. And so have you ever been asked for a donation on the street?
yeah,
And you walk right by. I mean, it's just like it's just true. It doesn't make you a bad person. It's fine.
mm,
Even if
yeah.
you get you're
Oh,
like, I don't even
I'm open about that. I got three kids, man. I'm not giving any money. Sorry.
that's
Yeah,
exactly no, but you're with the three kids. So you might be giving money elsewhere when they if you actually might be giving to that exact organization.
mm,
So that's level one. You're avoiding your idol because it's the wrong place, wrong time, wrong tool. Then level two is unsystematic engagement when you're confused by the messaging. And level three is frustrated engagement when you want to engage but you're distracted. So those three things. Now think about it as a teacher, how much time
yeah,
you spend. We just talked about this for a second. Just how much time you spend making sure a child
yeah,
is not at level three. Just not distracted
yeah,
all of the tools and also think about how much mental space you are using for each and every individual child, knowing when that child's distracted they're doing this, but when that child's distracted they're doing this, and it actually looks like that child when they're distracted but this child is not distracted. It is so much mental space. Okay, so those are the things that stand in the way of connection and engagement. Then you have the middle levels of how we currently measure engagement: structure dependent engagement and self-regulated interest. Structure dependent engagement is what we talked about in terms of doing what's asked of you.
yeah,
It's ChatGPT.
yeah,
Do this, do that. It's simple call to actions like call and recall, like memorization. Do this. And then five is essentially level five self-regulated interest, extrinsic motivation. Do this for a reward, which is quote unquote gamification.
yeah,
Earn to
yeah,
learn.
yeah.
All these ways we think about, right?
I mean, dangling university carrots in front of people, this kind of thing. Yeah,
So isn't and what I would actually say is our systems of education are more gamified than we could ever realize, but in the wrong way.
right.
We've gamified this entire thing through extrinsic motivation. The higher levels of engagement, critical engagement, level six, when you're inspiring someone to set goals to make a difference. And the seventh level, literate thinking, when personal values and beliefs, you're connecting your personal values and beliefs in order to be able to connect with the whether it's a conversation or a brand or a job or an experience or a lesson. Literature and characters do a tremendous job of level seven.
Yeah.
because you could see yourself end level 6. You start to think differently. You start to apply, for me, White Oleander. I don't know if you know that book, probably not.
No, it's not what I've read.
I'll do Perks of a Wallflower. Is
Yeah.
that one? And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
in high school for me. I He was such a different character to me, or even Catcher in the Rye, like these, or of Mice and Men. I'll do some
Yeah.
ones like that I remember from my childhood. Of Mice and Men is probably like let's talk about like Lenny, right?
Yeah.
Lenny, am I
Yeah.
remembering that
Yeah. Yeah.
correctly?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It was such, and also as we're talking, I'm thinking about all these books, Death of a Salesman, like all these books that I had nothing to do with as a young teenager, like a young teenage girl, that spoke to me. I still haven't told you what I'm actually doing, but you just keep bringing things up that are more exciting to
Well,
me.
this is interesting.
Yeah, great. So anyway, those characters, those narratives pull something out of the individual versus when you tell someone what to do, it's prescriptive, right? You're keeping them
Yeah.
at a lower level of engagement. And so I have asked, as I mentioned earlier, I have gone all over the world and I ask kids, how do you learn? And very, very rarely do they know. They
Yeah.
say something like, I like videos, or, I like pictures. Like they hear that that's kind of the way you answer.
Mm.
And so they don't even know where to begin with themselves. Have you ever had that experience with your kids yet? Like where
Oh
you've
yeah,
actually,
oh absolutely, yeah. I mean, you have that all the time. I think in the classrooms, the when you talk to people about how you learn. I had this exact conversation this morning. So I was doing a kind of an exam briefing with our senior year, just to talk to them about, look, you need to decide how you need to take agency over this. If you're preparing for examinations, you got to figure out what works for you. Don't rely on what you think should work for you, but rather rely on what you know works for you, which I think is super important. I think student agency is one of the things that we most get wrong, and we don't give them enough. I think once you start to really trust your students, I think, and it's something we don't do early enough. I think we don't
yes,
trust them enough to say, actually, you know what, this doesn't work or this does work. So we very much we tried here to build that culture of saying, yeah, we trust you. We're going to give you license to do this in the sense. So we're going to build a framework, but the framework's just going to be quite a few hundred yards bigger than it's been in
mm-hmm.
your previous schools. So you can actually, explore and come up with ideas that are interesting to you, that work for you, that and get them to explore, beyond, the realm of what they thought they should be doing. Because I think once you
Because
do
yes,
that, it becomes more exciting for them, and that's what happens after college, but also what happens after school, but also what happens within it. And so you have people exploring, I think, different ideas about themselves, different ways of learning, different subjects.
yes,
But I think that what really interests me is ways to then pull all of that back, and then the individual in the classroom, because education is this solipsistic approach thing, isn't it? It's what's happening in here, and it's this different for everybody. Is how to create a framework that then gives them an intrinsic motivation to push themselves, and that I
yes.
think that's the tough thing.
Yes. And also, when we ask kids, especially at an earlier age, how do you learn? This is a higher level of engagement, right? We're asking them to think about themselves and to look back on their life and apply this knowledge and information about it. They've never even been asked a question, they've never been given access to information about themselves.
Mm.
So everyone else, even if even if schools are quite progressive in nature and asking, in terms of, again, with progressive of thought, asking kids, what does it look like for you to learn? Often the teachers and the parents and the school and the administration owns that data. The
Yeah,
kids don't get to actually see, oh, this is what works for me. This is what doesn't work for me. This is what happened last year. This is what happened. They're not seeing that progress unless it's, again, on a report that's
yeah,
then been made for them. So polished. So what learning frequency is, now I'll finally answer the question, is so essentially it's using the levels of engagement. I'm gonna say one more thing before I actually say what it is, because I told you I can never answer just a question straight. I did a longitudinal study with a school in Denver, a magnet school, which is a public school that's themed and then pulls from all of the surrounding area. That's what a magnet school is, for a year with
mm,
teachers and students. It was first, second, and third graders, where we studied engagement throughout the entire year. So with 860 surveys, 12 and a half hours of lessons, qualitative interviews with teachers and students, and this product was born from that. And this is, again,
mm,
oh, well, in England is a public school, is a private school. It's very a state school, it's a state school. Okay.
mm,
And the intention was, what happens when we teach children about their own engagement on
mm,
a regular basis. So what learning frequency is it starts as a questionnaire. So it's 17 questions based on the levels of engagement. So the first set of questions are around the tools you need. Second set of questions are around communication preferences, then limiting distractions, productivity, extrinsic motivation, intrinsic motivation, and then when you feel most identified with learning, when you feel most deeply connected to learning. And what happens? Have you ever taken a Myers-Briggs, an Enneagram, any of these tests that tell you
Yeah,
what you are? That's not what this is.
yeah.
It visualizes your answers into an avatar. So what happens is each answer has a specific character trait. It's like using characters to develop character, representing that answer. This is why it's easier sometimes to show people what it is. And so you
I've got
actually,
imagination. I'm
okay,
there. Yeah.
there's about 60,000 iterations of these. So mine has, five eyes, a pink head, and actually I'll talk about that in one moment because you can actually see the whole collection right now of hundreds of kids of these frequency bots. And so the actual representation of art is what is visualizing their data. And then you can click the parts. So I can click my eyes and I could say, I need quiet time before I start work. I can click my nose and it says, it doesn't actually talk. This is not a real robot. This is people ask these questions. It is a visual, cute little bot creature on a
Yeah.
screen that you can click through and see about yourself and learn about yourself. And then you actually can download a worksheet that says ideas for you that takes the answers, like, okay, this is what you've actually responded, takes the traits, this is how it manifests into a visual representation, and then gives you strategies on how to take learning into your own hands, all completely automated.
Yeah.
And so then you're creating this experience, and it's free, completely free for schools, for kids. It's a public benefit. So the amazing thing about this is that then teachers get a guide of how to be able to just support these personalizations. So it's not putting more on teachers. It's not saying, hey, now you have to personalize learning for every single individual child. Blah, blah, blah. It's putting it into the child's hands. And what I did test is actually putting that PDF, that worksheet into ChatGPT and saying what are other strategies? How can you personalize this lesson? What's a letter that you can actually write to a parent on behalf of the student? How can you communicate this to, even if it was a potential internship, use this information about yourself to be able to, and ChatGPT then, it's all about what you put in, gives
Mm.
you quite impactful outputs. That's not the intention of this. This is not an AI product.
No.
I could talk about the gamification after, but this is the first piece that I wanted to share with
Well,
you.
I mean, it sounds. I mean, it's the. I think what I love about that is it's putting it into the hands of the student, but it's also giving information to the teacher. And I think one of the things we don't rely on enough is the professional capacity of a teacher in the room to take on multiple pieces of information about young people. I mean, if you ask any teacher and you walk into a room and they walk into that room with students they've had for a month,
Mm-hmm.
they'll be able immediately to tell the temperature of the room. They'll be able immediately to work out who's not got their work with them, who's up, who's down, etc.
Incredible.
And
It's
I think
incredible.
it is. I mean, it's great. I mean, it's why I love doing the job. But at the same, because it's a school is a collection of relationships. But if you have that additional information that these students are then that you've then got access to, and these students have access to, then it improves that relationship because what happens on both sides is, hang on, they know and I know, and so this is now something that we can talk about.
Yes, that is it. So I was just talking to a teacher about this. So when kids need to, this is younger ages because I was a first grade teacher and then a middle school teacher, but with first grade you have spelling words on the wall,
Yeah,
or you have math problems on the word wall, right? For
mm,
scaffolding, it's like, okay, if you don't know the
yeah,
answer, go check. Why don't we have that for executive functioning? Why don't we have that for human skills? And so teachers actually get a legend of what does my frequency bot mean about me? And then you could have conversations. And this is not to pinpoint a child and say, you need quiet time always. They have a worksheet and then they actually could put new ideas and strategies in an analog fashion. This is not all digital.
yeah,
You could say, okay, I tried this. And then at the end of the year, they do it again, almost like a yearbook photo, a snapshot of who they were and how they've grown and what they've learned about themselves. But the number one, even if this was a one-time thing and schools just did the frequency bot experience with kids, they asked, how do you learn? I have no idea. Cool. Take your bot. Now look at your bot. Now read your answers out loud. How do you learn? I need quiet time before this. I need to make sure that I don't, when I have distractions, I need to make sure that I have movement. Just those tiny, we're prompting them. We're giving them the language they need to start to actually know what feels right for them. And so that's the opportunity, is to be able to really equip them with the information, not just externally, but internally, for them to be like, oh, I know myself. And I
yeah,
can then use this as a feedback system with my teacher. So now let me just tell you one thing about the school in Denver that we worked with. So one little girl, she couldn't finish her schoolwork. And this is a again, state school, public school, 27 kids, one teacher in
yeah,
the class. And the teacher looked at her bot and it said that she was overwhelmed when she was overwhelmed when she didn't have her own space, when she needed her own space. And so she gave her noise canceling headphones and it switched like that. A tiny little
Yeah,
intervention. It's
yeah.
not a it's so that's the power. Now, I want you to imagine a world where that becomes a learner portfolio
Mm,
and that portfolio can plug into any gaming, quote unquote, learning environment
yeah.
anywhere in the world. And in the same way that we can personalize and optimize the experience, and the student owns that data, owns that information, imagine being able to do that also within digital realities, which they will be lost in, by the way, because they're going to be
Mm.
wearing contact lenses and living in these digital realities.
Yeah, I know. It's we're on that slippery slope. But within that, if we have people who are guiding those digital realities and guiding those structures for young people, then they become something that is going to be a benefit rather than simply to direct them to the sponsored by, etc. Which I tend to worry about, as well as kind of the other issues, which is lack of critical thought, lack of self-awareness, lack of self-agency. But what I love about this is you have a sense here that with that the students are then taking, and the teachers are, there's a guy. Sorry, I get this is one of the things. I'll start three sentences and then I'll come to
Me
something. And
too.
it's like,
I'll always,
actually,
but I'll
this
always
is what
come
I want to
back.
talk
I'll
about.
always come
It
actual back. Yeah.
reminds me of there was a cycling coach called David Brailsford in the UK, and he got knighted for this. And for the UK cyclists, why the UK is now good at cycling is
Hmm.
engaged in a process of the amalgamation of marginal gains. And so what it was, he said, look, we can't make massive leaps anywhere, but what we can do is we can make a tiny leap in 20 or 30 different places. And with that, that then starts to become actually really significant. And so I think with things like this, it's just those small moments that you suddenly go, oh, hang on a second, and everything has been put together. We've got a teacher who's self-aware, who's aware of their student, who's aware of this kind of element, who's willing to look at something new. And so you have this bang, 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 and suddenly it's like, oh, hang on a second, and then you have this decision that then opens up a
Yes.
new world for the kids. And so
Yes.
it's these sorts of kind of. I was talking with one of my colleagues the other day. We want to try and engage in kind of similar thinking here. Um, I mean, this goes from the sublime, which is looking at student data and looking for the patterns and digging into it, to the ridiculous, where we did this. We took the CO2 measurement in the mock maths
Hmm.
exam in order to determine the levels of CO2 versus the ideal O2 CO2 levels for peak concentration. Now,
Hmm.
that turned out to say, actually, you know what, we could try and do something about this. And so what we can do is we can say to the space, let's make sure the filters are cleared and scrubbed in the air conditioning before they sit the exam. I mean, there was a suggestion that we buy reams and reams of pot plants to put everywhere in order to make the space green and to make sure it was oxygen friendly. But I'm reliably informed by the head of biology that we would literally need to put a tree in there to increase the level to that point. So we're taking other action. But I think with something like this, but it's putting the responsibility not just on a single teacher, but giving that responsibility out to the teachers, out to the students, out to the parents, out to the wider stakeholders in terms of administration.
Yes, and everything you said about the teacher having this knowledge to be have such self-awareness for themselves, but also such awareness of every single individual's personalized needs and
Yeah.
what's standing in their way. They're just doing the levels of engagement all day long. They're at a three. What do I need to do to bring them a four? Okay, they fell to a two. What do I need to do to make sure to bring them to a four? What it's all just getting them to a four. They're at a four. How do I get them higher? They were at a high level. Now they've dropped. Oh no, what's happened? For every single child all of the time. What if we could take that self-awareness that teachers have and don't get paid enough for, and actually give that to children so
Yeah.
that they have that self-awareness and it's not actually on the teacher all of the time. And so that's the one answer I want to respond to what you just said. The second though is data is abstract and no one knows what it means. And so when even with kids, I go in and there is a way actually for kids to actually own this data. So, this is all GDPR compliant. We don't touch any data. The school gets access to this. The kids get access to this. It is completely an environment where kids get to interact with, again, their own quote unquote data. but it's fun and it's visual, and they're seeing data come to life. They're not like, these are my answers to a survey and what. That's where it begins and ends. I'm like, okay, so I
Yeah.
like, it's a cute little robot with 5 eyes or 2 eyes or 3 eyes or a pink head or antenna ears, and then they get to and this is of all ages. I do a special program with Pope Francis's non-denominational education foundation. It's called
Yeah.
Scola, on the culture of encounter, bringing kids together to interact and engage around the social issues of our time. And this, I create a profile based on the levels of engagement as it pertains to Scholas. And so I asked the kids, this was literally 2 days ago, what have you learned at Scholas? And they didn't know what to say. And they've been so inspired. They've been so excited. And so then they did this activity. And I said, click on the parts of the bot and now read. And they would say something like, Scholas has helped me align my values and beliefs to, being a civically engaged leader in the world, something like that, like a statement like that. And I said, this is what you say when people ask you what you learned here, when you go for an internship, when you write a college essay, when you talk to other kids about why this is impactful. Again, it's giving them, prompt engineer is going to be one of the biggest. We're giving them the prompts for human skills. Forget about just giving them the prompts to teach ChatGPT. Why aren't we giving them the prompts for themselves? Okay, so that's phase one.
Yeah. I'm still stuck on this idea of prompt engineer and this being a career at the future.
But we don't give, it's all about the inputs, right? And actually, what you said was so profound about how when they get into these gaming environments, they get into these digital realities, all we're thinking about is how to incentivize them to buy some type of sponsored post, right? That's also what we're doing in school, though, because we are stopping at level 5. So if we don't change our definition of success across all environments, then our kids will not know how to form their own identity, how to know what works and doesn't work for them. And when they are lost in these digital realities, and time and attention is the metric of success, and we can't measure all time equally.
Yeah.
One child can be in your class for 3 hours and listening intently and doing tremendous work, and one kid can be in your class and messing around about and doing absolutely nothing. Well, they could also be doing that in a game.
Yeah.
One kid could be in Minecraft doing tremendous work and networking and collaborate, and one kid could be in Minecraft messing about and doing something mindlessly. But we treat 3 hours in the same way. We need a nuanced understanding of engagement in all environments. And I'm not even just talking about learning environments, all environments. And then we need to give that data to the actual individual and teach them what to do with that information. And so that's what learning frequency is. It's an ecosystem around the learner, it's a portfolio for the learner, and it's a new measurement system that then gives that data to the learner so they can actually take learning into their own hands.
I'd probably describe it as a revolutionary approach to student engagement. I mean, I mean, in that sense, it's absolutely, it's what kind of we're about here, but with older students, granted, although some of them actually, I think would get a kick out of this,
Oh no, I
actually,
do high
which would,
school.
yeah,
My kids are,
it
I have
would,
a high school version.
yeah, it would work very, very well. But it does. It's an approach to student engagement that actually then reflects back to them what they can be looking at and can be working on. And as well, I think it's that purpose of starting a conversation and creating an opportunity to talk about these things. Because I mean, one of the other problems that we face, I think, across the board, is where we deal with students who are, and there's specific learning difficulty or neurodivergent or
Mm-hmm,
depending on whatever
mm-hmm.
the nomenclature of the
Yeah.
day is. um from my perspective, I don't think the idea of what's normal is a very, very, very small box.
There's no such
Okay.
thing as a
No,
standard student. That's my
no,
number.
absolutely.
What are we comparing it to?
I mean,
Who are we comparing this to?
the only way I tend to think of that, and I think the word normal doesn't really cut it, is a student who can engage with the work without any additional set of scaffolding or
Probably
support.
very unnaturally,
Yeah,
probably forcing themselves to sit there and to listen and to pay attention. And they're really good at being a good student. But does that actually mean they're really good at being a good learner?
but that what I find is also problematic, because great students don't tend to turn out to have these kind of stellar careers that we think they're going to have.
Yep.
Great students have got themselves into a right, I'm good at school, but then once they get to university and like, okay, this isn't quite the same, and then once they're in the world of work, they haven't got the skills to work with others, to deal with others, to create, to stand up
Yep.
to and be resilient
Yep.
to the
Yep.
kinds of challenges they face. So
Self-sufficient, entrepreneurial, creative,
yeah,
critical
what
thinking.
it's why we put the entrepreneurship project in here is because it's a compound skill. It's not, I'm not interested in the next Steve Jobs, but I am interested in students being able to work with each other and being able to, stand up for themselves, stand up for their ideas, stand up to say, actually, you know what, I don't like what you said, and to deal with failure, and to
Mm.
get off the mat and say, okay, all right, let's go again, and let's try it differently this time. But I mean, what you've got sounds, it sounds amazing. How can people kind of get in touch with us? Is it just a case of going to the website? Do they need to then
Mhm.
kind of log on? How's it work?
No, yes, they could go to the website and they could just do the contact form.
Right.
So right now, this is the teacher in me. So we're at about 20 schools globally, and the teachers that we work with and the heads of schools that we work with are willing to try things and then talk about it with
Yeah.
me. And those are the types of people that I want to work with. So this isn't just anyone can use it. Good luck. I want to be able to have a conversation, provide context, and then I want to be able to talk to them after and say, now what can we do? How can we improve? How can we continue to build this and move this forward together? So they can reach out on the contact form on the website, sure, learningfrequency.com. They can actually reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm very available when I'm not flying on a red eye. And those would be the two things. The next phase of research that we're actually doing is to build a certification that certifies when games are learning environments based on the depth of engagement. And
Okay.
so we're rolling this out in schools for free. Any school that wants to do this anywhere, we have two versions, a primary and a secondary version. Same exact visualization of data, but more elevated questions and ideas and strategies. I would love to roll this out. I would love to roll this out with you. I would love to see what
I'm I'm
happens.
I'm I'm filling in the contact form as soon as we get off this call.
You're gonna do it. No,
Oh
you
yeah.
don't need to fill out the contact form. You fill this is the contact form. This
Okay,
entire
right.
call
Yeah. No,
was
I
the contact
I
form.
think I think I think this is absolutely. It touches so many things I think international schools are interested in, that people who are interested in changing the conversation about education should be doing. So absolutely, yeah. I think it sounds exactly what's needed is in, and also I think the key word you used was nuanced. Is there's too much, I think, where we think we're looking at bottom lines, we're looking at data,
Yes.
and we're looking at data in a very kind of archaic way. We're not seeing the
Yes.
patterns, we're not seeing the changes, we're not thinking about the questions we're asking. So I think in terms of, as we go into a period where the information age, the students today have more information at their fingertips than the most scholarly scholar of the last 2,000 years. So it's how do we get them to a point and give them those human skills. So I think it sounds like an amazing project. So
Yeah.
it's
Everything you say
absolutely.
is like I want to capture and take into into a sentence and put on my website because the way you frame it is exactly. I think often when we're so in it, it's so hard to communicate. And I will just say
Oh
what you
yeah.
just said. I have to mirror back to what you said even beforehand around, allowing for children to have the self-awareness and for trusting our students to have student agency. They I remember being a student and the teacher just saying, because I said so, like this is the answer. And that was it. Grown-ups said the answers and kids did not. And then there was a shift. And I think
Yeah.
when I first became a teacher, my kids were the first generation. We had smart boards and they were telling me things that I didn't know. They were going on Google and saying, well, I saw this and what, and I was, wow, I don't know. And that's the opportunity is for us to, it's not about giving them more information. It's about teaching them what to do with that information.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's the opportunity.
I think I was having a conversation with a parent the other day about mentorship and just the way kind of we describe or the way we think about mentorship. And when I was, I'm Generation X, or the kind of slap bang in the middle of it. And the idea when I was younger was it's an older person who's going to show you the ropes and take you forward. And
Mhm.
today, I think I've got mentors, and my mentors include the students who I teach, who
Yes.
are absolutely mentors because they allow me to understand the culture that I exist within. Kind of young professionals I work with in terms of marketing, social
Yes.
media for the college, who not my area of expertise, but also people I've worked with before. So headmasters and things like that who I've worked with, and who are now either retired or doing different things around the world. I think you can get so much from that breadth of experience, and I think it's part of that reimagining or restructuring of the way in which we see, information, the way in which we see expertise. And it's very, very much the case that I always think you become a great teacher when you suddenly realize that you're not the smartest one in the room.
Yeah, you're the best teacher in the world when you realize that your number one job is to be the best learner in the world.
Yeah,
When
yeah. Oh,
all
I like
you're
that.
supposed
I'm
to be doing,
stealing that. I'm
steal
stealing
it,
that. That's
steal it.
brilliant.
Again, it just came up
Yeah,
now. But when it's a constant asking of questions, taking in information, and everything in this conversation has shown me that going back to the AI narrative is it's all about the right input.
yeah,
And we are overloading our kids with information. We're not teaching them how to be able to integrate that information in a way that's meaningful for them. We're not teaching them the skills they need to be, again, equipped for a world that's changing and ever evolving and rapidly changing, where we have no completely uncertain constantly. And so the skills that they need, and we keep talking about these skills, right, and how important they are. One last thing in our last 2 minutes, because this blew my mind open. Like, I was talking to this guy a few days ago, was actually talking to me about Star Trek, one of the biggest AI thought leaders of our time. And he was talking to me about, I mean, he's one of the minds behind IBM Watson, genius. He was talking about some research that just came out from Google about how one of the AI technologies that they're developing can now play any video game. And I said, okay, well, why is that important? And he said, because if an AI can play any video game, it's showing signs of much higher intelligence, like true intelligence. And I said, well, why? And he said, because gaming is the best environment to teach executive functioning, problem solving, critical thinking. And I was like, so wait, we are banning gaming from our kids because we're saying that, but we're teaching AI gaming in order to make it intelligent? And I said, well, everything is so backwards. So we
who's
need to
banning
completely
gaming?
reshift our. We need to, they're banning technology, right? Kids are spending 8 hours a day on phones, which they should. They should be banning. They shouldn't be banning technology. We need, again, a more nuanced lens to what
Yeah,
is healthy for our kids. What is I always say, what is the broccoli? Is the broccoli on the plate? This game is broccoli. And then being able to have a way to actually say, and did my kid eat the broccoli? Or do they
yeah.
just play around with it on a fork and throw it on the ground? That's for our next conversation.
Look, I'm gonna draw a close here. This has been probably the most enjoyable conversation I've had in several months. I thank you so much, Amanda, for kind of spending time here, especially having just jumped off a red eye from New York. If people want to get in touch with you, you're on LinkedIn. Obviously,
Yep.
go to the website learningfrequency.com.
Yep.
And sign up and check out what you're doing. I think you're posting regularly as well on social media. So there's so much, and I admit to stalking and reading the posts and getting a little bit inspired there, which has led to this conversation, which will lead to a further conversation where
Yes.
I get the global college involved in what you're doing. So
I'm so
um,
excited.
thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
everyone listening. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll speak again soon. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you. That was the best. Oh, it's still going. You